Hi everyone, and welcome to Time Out with REMAX. My name is Adrian, and I'm the CEO of REMAX for Southern Africa. Today we have a special guest, Pierre du Plessis. Pierre's going to share with us why you should never let a crisis go to waste. He's going to talk about how to navigate liminal spaces, the chaos that surrounds us, and how to create positive change. If you want to find out more, you can go to his website. This is pierreduplessis.com. But for now, sit back and let's listen to Pierre.
Hi, I'm Pierre and I want to talk to you today a little bit about the state that we're in. So the world has been turned upside down, inside out, and locked down. Like even oil is down, so far down that it's gone into negative. So I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if you go to the station and then they give you some cash when you fill up. So a crazy time. And I really believe that these times offer us great opportunity if we approach them in the right way. So I've been studying them for about the last 10 to 15 years, looking at chaos and complexity and uncertainty and how these are actually breeding grounds for innovation and creativity in ourselves and in our businesses and in our organizations. So this quote by Rahm Emanuel, he was Obama's advisor during his 28 campaign and a former mayor of Chicago. And he said this quote, that you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it is an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before. So that's what I want to talk to you about the opportunities that lie within kind of crazy times like this. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to name it. Like human beings name stuff. This is what we do all the time. We name rivers, mountains, kids, streets, even stars. We give them names. Because naming something, like using language, it helps us to define something, to say that this thing is this thing, but it's not that thing. And that is enough to actually give you a handle on a situation. So these type of in-between spaces exist all over the world where we have left the old but we have not yet arrived at the new. It's like when somebody close to you passes away, from that moment that you hear the news all the way up until everything has returned to whatever the new normal is, that whole time is kind of this in-between time. And there's a really great name for it. It's called liminal space. So the word liminal actually means threshold. It means like standing in a doorway or in a hallway where you've left one room but you've not yet entered the other. And it was made famous by an anthropologist, amongst others, called Victor Turner, who wrote a great book in the 1960s called The Ritual Process, where he talks about initiation ceremonies that he observed and how these are sort of manufactured liminal spaces. And where, for example, young men are taken from the village where the mother is, or the archetypal mother, and then have to go through the ceremony, this liminal space where the rules no longer apply and everything is sort of topsy-turvy and upside down, and then only to be then put into adulthood or be allowed to enter into the next stage of life, or to be transformed enough to enter into the next stage of life. So these kind of initiation ceremonies, and in fact all liminal spaces, have an element of pain, right? So in an initiation ceremony, it could be something like circumcision or scarring or or walking over hot coals, or in sort of a silly kind of varsity initiation, it might be downing a bottle of whiskey or going and swimming naked in an ice cold dam or something. So there's always like this level of pain that you need to go through. And then how we react to this pain. I mean, during this lockdown period and this pandemic, we are all experiencing a level of trauma and a level of pain, and how we react to that is really important. In fact, it's best actually not to react to it, but to rather respond to it in a conscious way. Because the way we normally react is this kind of fight, flight, or freeze response, and that's not like helpful at all. See, the beautiful thing about these liminal spaces is that they give us the biggest opportunity for positive change. The biggest chance for positive change. In fact, the only chance. It's the only time in our lives actually when we change for the better. And I'm sure that you would agree with me that if you look back on your life when you've experienced these liminal spaces, these times of great upheaval, that you afterwards you found that you've grown as a human being, that you are better actually because of it. It was Viktor Frankl, the famous psychiatrist that survived the concentration camps in the Second World War, Auschwitz being one of them, that said that when he worked with mental patients, especially one specific hospital in Vienna that had a really, really high suicide rate among their patients, he said that the doctors there should give them this single question to discuss. And what's so amazing is that this single question actually caused the suicide rate to drop all the way to 0. And the question was, what good is coming out of my hardship? Just that. What good is coming out of my hardship? Gave the patients enough meaning and a handle on their hardship that the suicide rate dropped to complete 0. So I want to show you these two images. They are two images of liminal spaces. The one is very familiar to us now, people standing with masks. The other one, the black and white image, it was taken just after the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City. And both of these are pictures of liminal spaces. So you can see in the picture that the rules in a liminal space change. A liminal space actually does like very, very specific things. One, it flattens hierarchies and removes statuses. So in those pictures, you can see, or you can't see, like who's wealthy and who's poor. It's difficult to tell race. It's difficult to tell education levels. It's difficult to see even male and female in those pictures, because that's exactly what a liminal space does. The second thing that it does is that it builds community. So it forces and bonds people together. If you can think about, for example, like when men fight together in war, they form really, really tight bonds. So whenever we suffer together, this is also like the idea behind initiation ceremonies, that you form a bond between those people that are going through the ceremony together. So it forms community, which is really important. And we see that in our world right now, where people are kind of coming together and helping one another and bonding. We're going to get through this together, stronger together. That is something that you see all the time. And then one of the last things that it does, a liminal space, a chaotic time, reveals what is underneath. Like it reveals the structural integrity of the previous system. So for example, like if you have a house, right? So you have a house with a ceiling or a roof, and then your kids are playing on top of the roof, and some of them, and they break the roof and it falls down, right? And it exposes the bare beams, for example. So that's like a chaotic event, like a little liminal space that they create. But what you then see is you see those beams are actually rotten, like they actually need to be replaced. So the same thing happens in liminal space. Like it reveals what is rotten, like what is in your business, for example, that is useless, that you've actually been spending money on, but it actually doesn't help and it actually doesn't do anything. And you can then go in and either repair that or then just get rid of it. So I want to give you like four things that you can do. That's sort of a little process. They overlap and they intermingle and they are cyclical and they happen over and over, but it's four sort of movements that you can do whenever you find yourself in a liminal space, in this chaotic time. So the first one that you need to do is to stop. Stopping is like the greatest gift. It's like this amazing ability that we as human beings have to just stop and look as an outsider onto a situation. That was Theodore Roosevelt also that says what a man needs is nerve control, cool-headedness that you can only get through practice, to then calm yourself, to not go into this fight or flight or freeze response at the back of your little lizard brain, but to rather like move from a calm, collected thinking mindset, right? So to stand back and to go from that space. So, and there's many practices that you can do, just like focusing on your breath, doing a couple of breathing exercises, meditation, all these things help you to just actually calm down, and then you can start to look around you. So one of the things that happens when you calm down is you get an opportunity to face your pain. And you should face your pain. You should feel the discomfort and feel the anger and feel the fear and all of that in order to go through it. There's a very famous story of the Buddha that was sitting and teaching one day under a tree, as the Buddha does. And all of his disciples were sitting there. And then while he was teaching, a demon named Mara, it's called the demon of death. Like here's a picture of Mara. He's pretty freaking scary. So Mara came in and walked into the meeting, and the Buddha's disciples went, "Oh my word, Mara is here, like running up to him going, "Teacher, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Mara is here." And the Buddha looked at Mara and said, "I see you, Mara. Let's have tea." So what the story means and the lesson that it teaches is that we need to be able to sit with our pain, to stop, to say, "I see you. I see that worry, that fear, that anxiety. Let's have tea." So talk to me. What do you have to teach me? Let me feel my way through it and accept that this is actually happening. Because what we tend to do is we'd rather drown our pain in alcohol or work or worry or obsession, or just plain denial and just freeze and ignore it like it's not happening at all. And that's not helpful. So during a liminal space, it's incredibly important to stop, calm yourself down, and then feel the emotion to get through that pain. Because it's getting through that pain that actually moves you forward to the next stage. It's like the pain that people experience in an initiation ceremony, that it's actually like their ability to go through that pain without the mother to help them or console them, and they can get through it by themselves. It actually gives them the courage to move forward and enter into the next stage of life, right? So the second thing you need to do is to observe, to look around you and to see what is there. What do you see? Which rules have been broken, right? Who are the new leaders that are showing up? Because liminal space does that as well. New leaders tend to come out of the woodwork, like the real leaders of an organization, not those that have been put there by power or nepotism or patriarchy or whatever. The real leaders tend to emerge. So who are they? Can you see them? And then obviously what is rotten, what is not working? And then what can you use? What is around you? What resources do you have that you can use? So that's really important. Human beings are tool makers and we use tools. That's how we've evolved. And actually we're highly visual creatures because we are constantly looking for tools. What can we use? What's the next thing that we can use? So And I know a lot of us are worried about resources. I just don't have the resources. I don't have this. I don't have that. But the thing is, there's an old Greek saying that says that whoever the gods wish to destroy, they give unlimited resources. So limited resources and limited time is actually like a breeding ground for innovation. It's when those really good ideas come out. So I want to show you this picture. I love this guy. I grew up watching this guy, and he's been kind of my little bit of a saint during this time. I'm sure you know him. It's MacGyver, right? So MacGyver was what the French call a bricolier. So a bricolier is somebody that uses whatever is around them to make something new. And that's who we need to be. You take your piece of toilet paper and a match and masking tape and you make a satellite dish. That's kind of the MacGyver way to do it. And we can all do that because that's what human beings do, is we're tool makers and we can make stuff. That's why I have faith in humanity that we're going to not only survive this crisis, but actually build some awesome stuff because of it, right? And then the third thing that you need to do is to act, to choose and then to act, because action trumps everything. If you were Indiana Jones and you fell into a hole, right, and it's pitch dark, what do you do? Sit there and think about it. Sit there and just do a meditation and become really calm. It's no, you choose a path of action and then you start and you do it. It's by trial and error that you kind of figure out where to go next, taking a small step, trying this, trying that. So that's one of the most powerful things we can do as human beings, is to choose and then act. to choose according to our value system, who we are, and especially who we've learned we are when we felt all that pain. We remembered that we actually can do this, that we actually are quite courageous and brave and talented, and we have all these skills that we've sort of forgotten about in our luxury or in our safety and stability. So this power to choose is really, really profound and magnificently important in a time like this. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist I mentioned earlier, also wrote in his book Man's Search for Meaning, which is like mandatory reading for anybody ever. He wrote, "Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, what he will become the next moment. And by that same token, every human being has the freedom to change at any moment." We can choose how we respond to this crisis, to this liminal space. And that's very, very important. But we can only do that once we've stopped, experienced the pain, observed what's around us, and then we make a choice based on who we are and what we have remembered. Like, human beings solve problems, right? So this is what businesses actually are. Like, at its very base, businesses are about solving problems. And at the moment right now in the world, there's like a heap of problems, which means there's like a heap of businesses that needs to exist, or that needs to come forth to like solve all of these problems. So the last thing that you need to do is to reflect. Like, reflecting is really important, and it's often a very neglected part of this whole process. To sit down and then to see, but what worked? And the trick here is to not only go with facts and figures, but really to also to go with intuition. Like, there's a friend of mine who used to be a CEO of one of the major retailers in South Africa, and he always tells me that, Pierre, is like, your intuition is always right. And when you weren't right, you know it wasn't your intuition. And I was like, well, I see you did like a little bit of a closed loop there, but I understand what he means. Like, we sort of neglect our gut feeling about something. And during times like these, when the rules no longer apply, when the hierarchies are fallen down, like things are kind of topsy-turvy and crazy, it's important to also go to that place. Yes, use facts and figures and spreadsheets and research and whatever, but also trust your gut and the collective gut or sense, intuition of your team to go, what do you feel we should be doing next? Because the funny thing with human beings is that we operate from this sort of unconscious base, this world inside of us that we can't always access, this sort of dream world that drives our motivations and our fears and our desires and like all these things, as psychologists like Jung and Freud and everybody has told us, which is this profound idea and this crazy idea that we are motivated by something that we can't see or access, or something that's weird and dreamlike and symbolic and metaphorical. And so it's almost like that you need to go to that place, because those places are like the birthplaces of creativity and of rational thoughts and of thinking and decision making and reason and all of that. But it starts in this chaotic kind of ooze, this underlying thing, this chaotic darkness. And like every single story that you ever that's worth its weight in salt, that's worth watching or reading, follows this pattern, like this classic like hero's journey, where the hero has to leave the normal, go into the underworld to find the treasure, and then bring that back to their people. So, and that's what we need to do. So that's also what this reflecting part is about. Like, it's like trusting your gut, feeling like the positives and the negatives, like feeling at the end of each day, like, what has worked for you today? Where do you feel something was like life-giving? And where do you feel like something was like life-sucking? Like, it was just awful, you don't want to go there anymore. Where do you feel something was like flowing? And with the moment you entered into that, in your career, business, or just in your personal life, like, where do you feel like there was something that was like life-giving, right? And that was flowing. And where do you feel things were like, it was like pushing a boulder up a mountain. It was awful and terrible, just sucking the energy out of you. And then the trick is to kind of lean into the positives and not into the negatives, to kind of move with the flow and see where that leads you. So the trick with this whole process of like acting and then reflecting and acting and then reflecting is to figure out the pattern. It's like when you're placed in this big room with all these little switches and none of them are marked. Like, how are you going to figure out which switch does what? It's like, well, you're going to have to start pressing buttons and flicking switches and then flicking them and going, what does that do? What does this combination do? What does that do? And the quicker you start that process, the quicker you can figure out the pattern. And the pattern is obviously the opposite of chaos, where there seems to be no pattern. So the new patterns are busy to form. And here's the big thing, right? So whoever figures out the pattern first wins. Or the quicker you figure it out, the quicker you will win. And the quicker you can leave this kind of crazy place. So that's kind of the 4 things I want to give you, like 4 little tools. Stop, observe, act, and reflect. And to do those repeatedly during a time like this. And then hopefully they'll emerge some beautiful opportunities and things that you can do. So, but like the best way, just to finish off with, the best way to actually to handle chaos is if you've been trained for it. If you were training beforehand in order to handle a time like this. Now, it's never too late to start training. There's this great axiom sort of in war times or military that says the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. So it's interesting to me that times of war and in religion or spirituality, there's the way that they train their people is for chaos is by giving them like these repetitive exercises that sort of simulate chaos, right? So for example, fasting is like a simulated liminal space, or going on basic training and really like extreme physical exertion, that's like a simulated liminal space. And how do you react? How do you respond in that? So that was actually one of the first lines that I told my team and our community when the lockdown was announced and all of this craziness started happening. The first thing I said was, this is what you trained for. All that time spent in meditation, all that time spent on retreats, all that time letting go, calming yourself, training your mind. This is what this is for, right? So my invitation to you is to keep on training, or to start training yourself by doing things like meditation, focusing on your breath, like discerning, figuring out, feeling, getting in touch with your gut, sitting regularly and feeling the anxiety and the fear. All of those kind of different practices and things that you can do to train yourself for a time like this, and for times like this when they happen again, because they will happen again. So I've actually compiled a small little book, or short little book, on training exercises called Train Naked. So to show up naked, like in the nude, meaning just as you are, with no pretense, no BS, no nothing, just as you are, and trying these exercises to train yourself for times of chaos, to be able to live a more meaningful life and like start doing work that really matters. So we'll put the link to the book. It's on Kindle and it'll be available on my website again after lockdown. If you want, you can order it. I think I've got a copy here. It looks like that. It's called Train Naked, and it's really helpful. It's got a couple of cool practices in. So I hope that it helps you. So last little story. My son is a wrestler, right? So there's a picture of him with his wrestling coach at the time, Nel. So I've got Nel's number on my phone, so like don't mess with me. But so anyway, in wrestling, there's a saying. It says, whenever you feel stuck, you're like stuck in a hold and somebody's really like got you. Like whenever you feel stuck, you're only a couple of small moves away from being free, from getting free. A couple of small moves. And the next time the Olympics is on, or it got moved out now, but just watch the wrestling and watch how tiny the movements are, especially like the Greco-Roman wrestlings. Tiny little shifts of weight, little movements of the wrist, even like a little finger. They can start a sequence of events that'll shift the balance of power and cause the other person to win that was originally stuck, right? So if you feel stuck right now, I want to encourage you and just say that, you're just a couple of small moves, a couple of small actions away from getting free. Because this is what humans do. we can adapt to a situation. We change, we evolve, we make tools, right? We are not trees. We don't just die when a drought hits. We change, we adapt. This is what we do. So you can do this too. You can get free and you can actually build something that's pretty awesome. And you already have the tools you need, and you can make new ones. Thank you for listening. I really hope I get to meet you on the other side of all this craziness, and I know that we all will get through this, and not only get through it, but thrive in it. Thank you.